Hello, welcome back. Feeding your greyhound is something that commonly crops up as a subject for discussion on social media, with many questions and just as many answers. Today I'm going to share some of my thoughts on whether it's best to feed kibble wet or dry. When you adopted your greyhound, it's likely that the rescue gave you some advice on feeding. Commonly at kennels, they're fed kibble, and you might have been told how much they should have each day. But is that it? Do you just shake some biscuits in a bowl, job done? Or is there more to it than that? When I got my first greyhound, I allowed her to self-regulate her intake. I could put a bowl of dry kibble down and she helped herself when she fancied some. There's nothing wrong with that approach if it works for you and your dog, but it can be hard to monitor their intake, and not every dog finds dry biscuits appealing. When I added a second dog, I had to move to feeding set meals because that allowed me to know how much each dog was having. And it's also helpful in managing their weight and noticing if there are any problems. And it was that point that I started changing things up a bit. You may well wish to add something tasty, often known as toppers, to the top of the kibble, and that's fine if your dog enjoys that and you find that helpful. I found that they tended to pick the good stuff off and leave the rest. I guess that wasn't as exciting as the things I put on the top. And of course, the point is at that stage that it's still got bits of the topper on it stuck to the biscuits that were underneath, and that attracts the flies. So if you then leave that down, you may find it gets messy. So you have to put it away and maybe even throw it away. If you want to add a topper every day, that's great, but you could also get into the situation where maybe you want to add something 2 or 3 times a week, and on the days when you're not adding something, your dog turns their nose up at plain kibble, and you get to the stage that they won't eat it unless there's something tasty added. So what is the solution here? My approach to this is to add warm water to the kibble. Not lots, maybe just a centimetre or so in the bowl with the biscuits in, just enough to make them wet. So why does this help? The water makes a kind of gravy when you add the kibble, and drinking that flavoured water can tempt the dog to start to eat if they're not too keen. Adding warm water rather than cold water brings out the smell of the food. If the water is warm, it brings out the flavour. The warmth enhances the smell. You may notice that yourself. And dogs are more interested or more attracted to things that smell good rather than taste good. Their sense of smell is far better than their sense of taste. So warming it up may tempt them to eat it, whereas adding cold water might not make it as exciting for them. A big issue for me has been that dry kibble gets stuck in their throats. They do tend to almost seem to inhale it. They take it in very quickly, and it doesn't really mix with saliva on the way down in the way that our food would if we were chewing it. And I've had a couple of dogs who would eat so fast they just gulp the biscuits down and they get stuck in their throat, and then they cough and it all sprays out across the kitchen. It's a bit like if you try to eat a packet of dry crackers without a drink to help it down. Wetting the kibble helps it to slide down their throat instead of getting stuck. Hello, Gandalf. Now you can also add a little bit of something tasty to make it more interesting. So often when you're adding toppers, they can be quite high calorie. It's often more interesting stuff is more fattening, same as with our food. And if you need to be careful about your dog staying a healthy weight, if you add water as well, you can get away with adding literally just a spoonful of something interesting, mixing it in with the warm water, and it will then coat the biscuits and they get the taste of that extra interesting food on all of the biscuits rather than just sitting on the top. And that may tempt them to eat the whole bowl of food rather than just pick off the nice stuff from the top of it, a bit like eating the cherry off the cake. If you're worried about your dog not drinking enough, adding water is also a good way to make sure they have a bit more over the day. So that can be useful too, particularly in warm weather. Some people are keen on soaking their kibble, and I thought I should mention this because it does often crop up as a suggestion. And when you soak it, it's surprising how much it swells up. It sometimes almost doubles in size in the bowl. And it's thought that it will reduce the risk of bloat if the food is soaked before they eat it, which is a very valid reason for doing this. It's not something I've tended to do. I worry about the nutrients spoiling in the food, the micronutrients, not the protein and the carbohydrate and so on. So I don't tend to soak food. If you're going to do this, I would opt for warm or cold water to soak rather than boiling water, because I think there is a risk that the micronutrients could be damaged by adding very hot water, although of course it will fluff up more quickly. If you have a dog that has no or very few teeth, it might well be something you consider. But if you don't need to do that, it's probably not something that you need to look into. That's all for today. I hope you found that useful, talking a little bit more about whether you might add water to the food. We'll be back again soon with more information for you. Bye for now. Look out for new videos every Monday, and why not subscribe so you don't miss out?